Welcome back to Tell This Story. I'm your host, Doug White. Each week we explore the unique challenges faced by veterans, first responders, and their families through authentic storytelling. This week we're sitting down to a powerful conversation with Davin Cole, a 33-year law enforcement veteran who retired as a lieutenant from the San Francisco Police Department. Davin has a wealth of experience as a field training officer, canine officer and trainer, patrol sergeant, investigation sergeant, and lieutenant. Davin's career was marked by both success and hardship. He faced the many challenges of public service, including a serious on-duty injury. After a life-changing event and a diagnosis of complex post-traumatic stress, Davin embarked on a journey of recovery. Through it all, he emerged as a passionate advocate for mental health and addiction awareness among first responders. Davin now dedicates his time to public speaking and sharing his personal story to break the stigma surrounding mental health in law enforcement. Davin, my friend, welcome to Tell This Story.
Thank you for having me, Doug. Excited to be here.
Man, it's great to have you here. I just for a quick overview for our listener. This is this is episode 4, so we'll probably have 2 or 3 by the time this airs. You and I met on the last Next Shift debrief through Jessica Flores, and that's an amazing platform in itself. But going around the screen, as it were, on the Zoom call, listening to everybody's story, just getting the wave tops of your story, man, it's incredible. And over the past couple of weeks that we've been connected, just kind of looking in and following you, and listening to some other podcasts you've been on, specifically the Overwatch Collective and After the Tones Drop. Buddy, tell me your story, man. This is remarkable in every sense. Your career, the ups, the downs, and where you're at now is just, it's a remarkable tale, man. So please share it with us.
Sure. I mean, I just go back to the beginning. I grew up in San Francisco, was raised there. They say that San Francisco raised me, educated me, and employed me for pretty much my whole life. Pretty much always wanted to be a cop. My older brother had joined the sheriff's department before me. He was 6 years older than me. So I joined the sheriff's department after him, did that for about 4 years. San Francisco is kind of unique because it's one city, one county. So there's no unincorporated San Francisco. So the sheriff's department there is mostly custodial and the courts. And I'd always just wanted to be on the streets. I always looked up to the SFPD and the cops out there, and that was what I wanted to do. So once they started hiring again, I applied, got in, did a modified FTO because I'd already gone through their academy as a deputy, went out in the streets. Career started kind of crazy. 2 hours into my very first shift out of the academy, my field training officer and I go out to call the lady with the knife threatening suicide, and there she was at the phone booth. Show you how long ago that was. And she turns around with the knife and starts walking towards us, threatening us with the knife. She did eventually put it down. But holy cow, I was like, I almost had to shoot somebody 2 hours into my first shift on the streets. I kind of was the precursor of what my career was going to be like. It was, I started out at the busiest stations in the 90s, in 94, 95. Things were a little bit crazy. We had all the gang violence and the crack. And during probation, got hit by a car on purpose. A guy we chased hit me, backed up and hit me again. Shots were fired. He did get away. We caught him about 6 months later. That was the first kind of disappointing thing because even though he hit me twice on purpose, he got 3 years of credit for time served for assault with a deadly weapon, which I thought was kind of a low sentence. But, got over it. Didn't bother me. Moved on. Got to my permanent assignment. After a year or so, got into some plainclothes work, doing gang enforcement with my partner. And we go to walk into one of our neighborhood parks, and it has some gang violence the week before. Bunch of gang members see us. They all take off running. And as we turn the corner, there's a guy there waiting for us with the shotgun and shoots around at us, misses. Thank God. We get him into custody. Another disappointing one. Goes to trial, and he's acquitted because They said there could have been a gunman that we didn't see who escaped over a 10-foot wall. So yeah, jury
Not the guy
selection is
holding the shotgun that you both saw.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I
Got it.
didn't
Check.
see him shoot. I saw him with the shotgun in front of him. My partner saw him shoot at us, but that just wasn't good enough for the jury. And
Because duck hunting on the city streets is fine. It happens all the time.
yeah, I think in this case it might have been boar hunting for some pig.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
it
an
was a little
alpha dad joke.
right. Yeah, still, God, if my daughters were here, they'd be like, "Oh, Dad." But so I had a good career. The only thing I had really wanted to get into, everyone has their, I want to be a detective, I want to work gangs, I want to work narcotics. For me, all I wanted to do was get in our K-9 unit. Before I'd gotten into the police department, I was a store detective at one of our major retailers, and the dog unit used to come in and train. That's just the coolest job right there. That's the only thing I wanted to do. So our department works off of a waiting list. You just put your name on the waiting list as soon as you finish probation. And it came up in 5 years, which was kind of short at the time, but it was great. And I ended up doing 15 years in our K-9 unit. And 5 years in, unfortunately, we lost our sergeant to a massive heart attack on duty. And he had been the trainer. And so we were kind of without. So me and another officer said, "Hey, we'll take over the training." I was the lead trainer, so I was responsible for the selection, purchase, and training of the dogs along with my partner. And then any new officers that came down. And that's kind of where things took a turn for me as far as what was going to happen to me 15 years down the road after that. During a training scenario, one of the dogs came and bit me in the calf. And it wasn't even a bite scenario. It was an obedience, tactical obedience. I think you know this. If we say it's tactical, everyone thinks it's cooler. It sounds like it's going to be more fun. But yeah, he came, he latched onto my calf and did a nice prey shake and let go right on command. So the officer told him let go. He let go. I'll be honest with you. The first thing that made me mad was that he put a hole in my brand new BDUs. So I was like, "Oh, you got to be kidding me. Rip my new pants." And then when I lift up my, right?
It's amazing what we think of.
It wasn't the bite. It was, these pants cost me like $60.
Just got these. I just got the crease right.
But I pull up my pant leg, and there's a golf ball size hole in my calf. So you can see all the way down to the calf muscle. And I'm just like, "Oh, this is bad." So everyone's kind of not panicking, but they're running around. One guy's like, "Hey, cut his pants off." I'm like, "No, don't cut my pants off. Let's just get me to the hospital. Let's go. I don't get an ambulance. I don't want this blasted all over the radio," which unfortunately it did. And yeah, I just didn't want to make a big deal about it. But anyway, yeah, so I went. I had 2 holes in my leg, one on the inner and outer calf. They sent me home. They put 1 stitch in it for the drain. 3 days later, got a really bad infection. My leg swelled up. I ended up back in the emergency room and in the hospital for about a week before they got the infection under control. But as the leg healed, the nerves in the leg got impinged by the scar tissue. And it was a nerve bundle. That's the same bundle that goes to your sciatica. So I would get this really bad pain that would go up my back, into my neck, down my left arm, down my left leg. And so I just had this chronic pain. And so, of course, they were treating it with opioids. So I was on initially it was Vicodin, and then they bumped it up to Norco. The only difference is you go from 5 milligrams of hydrocodone to 10 milligrams, and then the acetaminophen is lower for your stomach. So, I get this injury about eight months into it. I'm calling in for a refill, and I had no problem. I had chronic pain. It was hurting all the time. But I remember asking the doctor, I'm like, "When is this pain going to finally go away?" And he's like, "Oh, it was a really bad bite. It's probably going to be a year or more before you're out of pain." I was kind of shocked. I didn't expect that, but I was like, "Okay, I'm getting through it." And that was right around the time I was going back to work full time. I was doing okay. I took the pain meds as I needed them. We had an 8-hour window, so can't use it 8 hours before the shift, and that worked. And most days I could get through my shift with no problem. And if I couldn't, if the pain just was too much, they'd put me administrative duties, and I'd I'd strip everything down and just sit in the office and do the sergeant's paperwork and scheduling. Then it just kind of time went on for that. Fast forward now, it's 2.5 years. I'm still in pain. I'm still taking high doses of opioids, seeing a pain manager on the regular. I was fortunate that I needed to switch pain manager so it'd be closer to my home because we'd moved. And I got connected with Stanford pain management program, which was a really good program. But yeah, the neurologist is sitting in the room one day, just doing a follow-up on how everything was. And I remember asking the neurologist, hey, doc, what's my long-term prognosis with my leg? And he looks at me and he goes, I'm going to have to be honest with you. He goes, this is probably as good as it's going to get for me.
Well, this is 2.5 years in.
2.5 years in. And wow. That took all the wind out of my sails. Hey,
yeah,
I'm not ashamed of it. I went out to my car in tears for like 10 minutes. I was just thinking, I was about 44 at that time. And I'm like, this is going to be the rest of my life. I'm going to wake up in pain. I'm going to go to bed in pain. I'm going to be taking opioids for the rest of my life. This sucks. And, my pain manager, shit is funny. She called me about 30 minutes after that. She goes, are you doing okay? And I'm like, no, that really kind of sucked. So the nice thing with that program, they have a psychologist in the pain management program. So they sat me down. He went over everything. He talked about quality of life. What things can I do? What things can I not do? Still able to do the things I enjoyed. He got me through it. And so I just kind of accepted that was going to be my fate. I'll just have to manage this and move on. Finally, after about 3.5 years, they found a surgeon. One of the issues is they don't like to go in and mess with that because, they have to open up your leg again.
Yeah.
And they don't know if when it heals, it's going to make it worse this time. But these surgeons there had come up with a method where they could operate on it, clean the scar tissue, kind of tuck the nerves away and protect them while your leg heals back up. So they got me into the surgery and it was successful. It was like 95% of the pain gone. I couldn't believe it. It was like the happiest day of my life. But then that's when the problem started because they said, okay, we're going to wean you off the pain meds. We're going to take like 2 to 3 months. We're going to do it really slow. And this was before they had Suboxone and these other treatments. And that's when I realized, shit, I'm addicted to this. I was already
How long at this point from the time that you were first given the pain meds after the bite to what we're talking about now, the recovery from this second surgery or from this surgery?
Just about 3.5 years. Yeah.
Wow.
And, about a year earlier, I was starting to suspect, like, I'm taking more. I'm not making it to the 30-day prescription. And I was pretty sure I was becoming addicted to them. But then I was like, I got to take them the rest of my life. So whatever. But now that they're weaning me off, I was like, I don't want to stop taking this. These, as I tell people, these were my happy pills. They kept me in a good mood all the time. And it was right at that time that the workers' comp was closing out my case. So they closed out my case. I went back to my family doctor. He knew about the injury. And I just told him, yeah, it still hurts. I'm still in a lot of pain. And so he started writing the scripts again. And that continued for another 7, almost 8 years. During that time, probably halfway into that, I added alcohol to it. The depression was bad. I didn't know what was going on. I was depressed all the time. I was happy in life. It's weird. Like my marriage was great. My kids were great. Eventually in my career, I promoted to sergeant. From sergeant, I went back to the district station. I worked at the district station. Then I was asked to start a brand new homeless outreach unit. It started with just me and 7 officers. And eventually we were working in a multi-agency collaboration. So we kind of had an ICS model command post set up. And so eventually our unit grew to a captain, 2 lieutenants, 4 sergeants, and 42 officers and civilians.
Wow.
And when a lieutenant retired a couple months after, they gave me the acting lieutenant's position. And I held that for almost 3 years and basically ran the field operations. And my partner, the other lieutenant, he ran the command post. And so I was doing great. my career was doing great. And I had set these moral, this is what you do when you're an addict. You create these excuses for yourself, these fake moral excuses. Like, oh, I never use at work. I don't drink at work. I don't show up to work drunk. I only
Yeah, that
drink
means
at
you have
night.
control. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, one of the worst misnomers out there is, they call it a functioning addict.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not really functioning. I mean, that's a myth of phrase. But people use it to just say, hey, I'm okay. I'm at the peak of my career. I took the lieutenant's exam. I did really well. I was next up for that permanent position. I was going to stay because once I got promoted to lieutenant, because of my time as the acting lieutenant, I already would have been eligible for the captain's exam. I go, I did great on lieutenant's exam. I'll do great on the captain's. I'll stick around for captain's. And, it's a huge bump in pay. It's a $42,000 a year jump in pay. Yeah, because you go from hourly to a salary. So they get compensated well. So I'm like,
Yeah.
I'll do that. I'll take the captain's job for a year. Maybe I'll just do the night captain. I don't have to run a district station. And, things were looking great, but inside I was struggling. And I didn't know why. I didn't know why I had to keep drinking. I had to keep taking the pills. I didn't know what the hell was wrong with me. We were going on vacations. I took my family to China. I took them to Japan. We were just going on. Life was going great. But every night I was just sad and was self-medicating with the pills and with the alcohol. And things were the depression was getting bad. I started to have the suicidal ideations. I started just thinking, I tried to stop drinking alcohol because I told myself, I'll stop drinking the alcohol first on my own. And then once that's under control, I'll stop taking the pills. But I could never get more than 2 weeks. I think I made it once, 30 days with no alcohol. But I couldn't stop. And I just got to the point where I was like, this is never going to end for me. I'm never going to be able to stop taking this. I'm stuck. And I don't want to live like this anymore. And so the suicidal ideations just kept getting stronger and stronger. And I just kept telling myself, no, I don't want to do that to my family. I know, especially with kids, that they have a higher rate of suicide if they lose a parent to suicide. I just didn't want to cause that trauma to them. Yeah. And, my wife knew about the drinking. She suspected the pills. She would find a bottle every once in a while, but I would just, oh no, my leg was hurting last week. So the doctor gave me a refill for a few weeks. And she knew that I was depressed. She just wasn't sure what to do about it. But as it got worse and worse, I struggled more and more. And I was just tired of it. I didn't want to do it anymore. And 3 years ago, almost to the day, it's been a couple of weeks, but I was down to one pill. My next refill wasn't for another 8 days. We were supposed to leave on a destination wedding for some family members to Mexico in 4 days. And I realized I'm going to run out of pills. And I'd been through withdrawals several times from running out. And the third, fourth day is when it really gets bad. And I realized that's when I'm going to be on a plane to Mexico. And what can I do? And sometimes, there's family members who were, well, oh yeah, I have some, you can take some of mine, and just couldn't find anybody. And as I sat there, the only thing that came to mind was, you know what, just go rob the pharmacy. And then you're going to go get help, though. You're going to get help after that. Because the thing was, my department probably has one of the best EAPs out there. Our behavioral science unit really is a model way to run it. And you could ask for help, full confidence, pretty much 24/7. You could call down to BSU. You tell them what's going on. All they do is they tell the department, hey, David needs 30 days. He's going to use up 30 days of vacation family leave. And they're like, okay, that's all they want to know. Nothing else. They want to know why, what the reason could be for anything. And then they'll take you up to a detox place that we go to out here that all the first responders go to. It's they have culturally competent counselors on staff. They've been around for years. It's up in Napa Valley. It's in a beautiful place. I couldn't do it. I couldn't bring myself to ask for that help. And so when that day came, I was like, I'm just going to go rob the pharmacy, but I will ask for help. when I get back from Mexico. Go into the pharmacy, I hand the pharmacist a note. I see the pharmacist go and call 911. I see her giving my description on the phone, and I just stand there. I don't even try to leave. And they give me a bag of like 9 bottles of pills. And I walk out of the pharmacy, and there's the police department in the city that I live in, because I decided, why not pick the one closest to my house? And
that makes sense. That's a clean getaway.
Yeah.
I mean, it just proves that when you were in that state, you are capable of rational thought.
Oh no, I parked my car almost a block away. Not out front, so we're a quick getaway. I parked a block away. All the things I don't want to say it like this, but really the worst way to plan a robbery is what I did.
Yeah.
So I get arrested. For 2 seconds, I think I'm going to run. And I realize, no, just kind of skip across the street, and I just lay down, let them handcuff me. And as soon as they got me cuffed, I told them who I was. I did try to hide it, but then I just collapsed. I just fell apart. I'm in the back of the car, banging my head on the cage, in tears, just like my life is done. And I had brought a gun with me for me. I told myself on the way there, if the police show up, I'm just going to quickly pull the gun out and shoot myself in the head and be done.
So it was never brandished during the actual robbery itself?
No, I never pulled it out. It was tucked in. It was a little snub-nosed revolver. They didn't know I had a gun until after they handcuffed me. I found out later from people who watched the BWC. Apparently, I had reached for it like 3 times, and I don't recall that. I don't no memory of doing that.
That's amazing.
So something stopped me. I know a higher power stopped me from doing that. That wasn't meant to be. Because even, they booked me into the county jail. Twice I grabbed the phone cord and wrapped it around my neck. I was going to hang myself in the cell, but didn't. Then the next tough part came was my wife bailing me out and having to tell her and my daughters what happened. And that was hard to do, to have to explain to that. But my department still, the very next day, BSU was at my house. They said, hey, we got you a bed tomorrow up at Mountain Vista Farms. We're going to take you there tomorrow. And this is still in my mindset. Well, no. I have to leave to Mexico in a couple of days with the family. They're just like, no, you're coming.
That's not how this works, Davin.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, no.
You're not leaving the country after an arrest for robbing a pharmacy.
No, you're going to get help is where you're going.
Can I just put a pin in right there?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's remarkable. And it's a testament to your career. And I can only imagine your agency taking everything. I mean, obviously I wasn't there, but I would have to imagine that they would take your years of service into account. The fact that it was a non-duty injury that's led to this, who you were, the actual severity. I mean, it's not like you were waving a gun or set the place on fire to take pills or anything. So, but I still think it's absolutely amazing that next day, your agency's at your house saying, it's time to go get help, and we're basically going to Uber you there. Mm-hmm. That's incredible. I mean, you saying that your department has the best DAP program is a freaking understatement, just by the fact that they showed up and like, hey, bro, let's get you some help. That's incredible to me.
Yeah, I will praise them for the rest of my life on not just what they did for me, but for what they've done to others. Mm-hmm. And I recommend them to other agencies all the time. I give the number out to our BSU and I go, if you want to get your program up and running or you want to modify it so it's run the right way, you got to call our unit. They, and it was put together years ago by other officers, one who actually eventually got his doctorate in psychology, but they pushed hard to have it codified. So it was written in policy so they could never be changed. So somebody else couldn't just one day come in and go, yeah, we're not doing that anymore. There was policy changes take a long time here, and I'm glad they did. Yeah. I mean, it was. I owe them a lot, quite a bit for that.
Yeah, that's remarkable, and for anybody who wants to hear more about the process and the behavioral service unit up there, I would recommend going to After the Tones Drop, because Aaron and Cinnamon did a great job. I mean, they're clinicians, so that's where their interest is. They really peeled that stuff back. So that's great information there. But what I want to do is I want to drill down to your experience once you got there. I mean, having heard the episode that I just referenced, It was amazing to me that there were other cops there from like your agency. Like, oh, wait a second, I'm not alone. How many times have you and I been on a call with other people, or even on the debrief with Jess in the next shift, and oh my God, I'm not alone. I mean, I don't know why we think it is that we're so special or so rare that it's just us that is living this human condition with an inject of trauma and profession. Can you speak to that a little bit? I mean, what it had to feel reassuring, or I don't want to say empowering, but it probably had to bring you some reassurance to know that there were other people that you knew of who were having the same problem. You know, I'm not broken. There's hope for me. I mean, there's got to be something in that.
Yeah. It's when you're stuck in that addiction, you think no one will understand. No one's going to understand why I'm stuck here. No one's going to understand what's going on with me. And then, when I got up there, I saw an officer from my department, and then a couple more came into the program while I was there. Then there was other first responders from other agencies. And then not only that, like the other thing was that kind of in that realm is that no civilian is ever going to understand. Well, now I'm in a room of mostly civilians. There's first responders, but this is a mixed group, and they all understand. They and their stories were different and the same, right? We all have our own ways. We all kind of ended up at the same spot, and our roots had very similar stories of how we got there. There's a section there after you've been up there for a few weeks that they call it your how. Honesty, openness, and willingness to share. And they have you just stand up in front of the whole group and just say, hey, this is what happened to me, and this is how I got. And it's empowering in a way. I mean, it's cathartic. You've already heard other people's story, and now you go, I'm going to tell mine, and it feels good because I'm not alone. And to see the other officers there, and I know one of the officers that came up was a younger officer, and he told me later on, he goes, seeing you there made this so much easier for me to get through it. So it made me feel good, but I was still stuck in my head on the crap that I just did. But I was glad, that I was there for him and be able to talk to him and, help him work through his first couple of days there. And then as time has gone by, I'm part of a AA group, and any first responders who've been up through Mountain Vista ends up joining this group. So now, 3 years down the road, numerous officers from my department, from 8 neighboring agencies. And, it was really that first year that it really hit me like, this is a bigger problem than we talk about. Like we mention it. And the other thing, I was talking about, didn't know what the hell was going on with me. Once I got out and I went into therapy, I found out that I had PTSD, complex PTSD. And in my mind, it had been, well, I thought about it. I'm like, I don't have nightmares. I don't have flashbacks. None of the 2 shootings I got into, I don't care about them. I don't freak out and be like, oh my God, this happened. Well, it was affected. Everything was affected. Even some childhood trauma was there. And, with the complex PTSD, it's that cumulative effect of constant exposure to trauma. And I talk about the childhood trauma. That's the other thing I found out. And I was just talking to a chief in an agency in Kentucky about this, is that we had kind of similar experiences. And we talked about the number of first responders now that we've met who've come from childhood trauma. And, is that a driving factor? Does that kind of push us towards the type of work that we do? Do we feel like we now need to help people because we felt we weren't getting help we needed?
There's a lot to that. There is a lot to that, I think, and I've been hearing that more and more. Dr. Phil Backey, I heard him on a podcast several months ago, and he mentioned adverse childhood experiences. And I would agree that, people, by the time you're 18 or 19 years old, you show up with 18 or 19 years worth of baggage with you. So I think we all start with different levels of full in our cup. And like me, I was drawn to law enforcement because I despise bullies. I always root for the underdog, and I hope for the best and look for the best in people. And anybody who is going to going to harm someone. I didn't like that. And I was bullied when I was a kid, but not to the point where, I was in dysfunction. But that certainly was a part of my drive to serve. There's a lot to be said for that, man. And we become very adept as veterans and first responders, in being able to compartmentalize that stuff, as you refer to it, as throwing it in the junk drawer.
Yeah.
And we do. We put it in small little boxes and we put it on a shelf. And one of these days that shelf is going to break. And now you are dealing with a mess full on. And it could also be in your case, with addiction on top of that. So, I mean, it's a double whammy. I mean, it's a tough place to be in.
Yeah, no, the vast majority, just the vast majority of addicts that I've met, both civilian and cops, had childhood trauma. I mean, pretty much everybody who was up at the farm was talking about some type of childhood trauma they had. And then with the first responders, almost all of them have PTSD, some form of PTSD. And the complex PTSD is really now starting to get the attention. Like, I had never heard of it until I started, going through this and doing the research. Now they're starting to address that, how many of the first responders out there are dealing with this complex PTSD? And I've seen some statistics go as high as 56, 58%. And I wouldn't doubt it.
Now, is that through self-reporting? Because, I mean, if it's self-reporting, I would imagine it's going to be much higher.
Yeah. And I think it mostly is. There's a lot of universities that have done studies on it. They've done a lot of studies on it over in the UK. I've found some good articles over there. It's like the addiction. They say the addiction rate's about 30, 35%, but that's self-reporting. And I can tell you that's going to be a lot higher.
Yeah.
And it seems awfully low, which is unfortunate that it's that high.
Yeah. And not only that, I don't think there's any other way other than self-reporting. Because if you hand a cop or a firefighter or a dispatcher a piece of paper and say, hey, fill this stuff out, we're going to read the first question. Like, no, not today.
Yeah.
Not today, champ.
Yeah. This is not.
What do you see here? I see a basket of puppies. No, you don't. That's a barn fire. The horses aren't getting out. Oh, no, it's a basket of puppies. We're all good here.
Yeah.
So
we're the worst at admitting things to ourselves.
Yeah. And to have these conversations. And I kind of wanted to circle back when we're listening to everybody else's stories while you were there. And telling your own story, I have found, and one of the premises of the book and my platform now, and tell this story, obviously, and its name is the power of storytelling and the power of, not vulnerability. I like to shy away from that word, but honesty, that self-introspection, or the introspection and being honest with ourselves and putting it out there in the world. I think there's a lot of power in that. And to be able to share your story and provide a platform or shade for someone else to step into to share their story. You said it was cathartic. And now that you're a speaker, do you find that speaking and sharing this more, one, is providing opportunities for everybody else to, as you said, for that younger officer to feel powerful enough to make it through? But do you feel it's also helping you as you're doing this?
Yeah. Oh, no, absolutely. I every time I tell the story, a little bit more of that guilt and shame that I still hold on to. I mean, it's still there. It's definitely way better. But I remember one of the therapists telling me, they called it radical acceptance. When you're able to tell your story in all its bad, good, whatever, it's radical acceptance. And it is. And when you could get to that point, I'll tell you, that was knowing that, learning that, and knowing that I could practice that radical acceptance was probably the biggest step towards my healing for me personally. And then getting out and telling the story, because, at the end of the day, I had to make some good come out of this, and my life is slowly getting back together. And when I sit here earning lieutenant's salary as a fully retired police officer and simultaneously am a convicted felon still on felony probation with the search condition.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because we're not done with your story. I mean, honestly, we're not even to the happy part yet. And I mean, where you're at with the therapy and going through that's all very promising. And we jumped ahead to what you're doing now, but walk us through the the legal ramifications of that day. It's completely remarkable to me. I know it's coming, but I get excited because everybody else is about to hear it. But walk us through that. It's incredible.
Well, so they charged me with 7 counts of robbery because there were 7 employees behind the counter.
Come on, it's a little rude.
I thought that too. My county, San Francisco, obviously is not known for being a very conservative area. My county, San Mateo County, is a little bit of the outlier in the fact that they're definitely known as a county that's tougher on crime. So that's what they do. There were 7 employees there. You handed a note to one of them, but they were all victims. So that's 7 charges.
No, it makes sense. That's how I would have charged it too.
Yeah. And you ran across the street. So there's your resisting arrest.
Oh.
And you had a firearm on you. So you committed a crime with armed. And this was a gun that I bought like 20 years ago, and they couldn't find the registration on it. So it was also unregistered firearm. Yeah. And at the end of the day, I will say this. You kind of talked about, my department treating me well and my career. Yeah. And, like I said, I was in charge of our homeless outreach unit for almost 5 years. And that gave me a lot of brownie points. The chief's office was obviously happy with what we were doing because it was such a political issue. I was never a juiced person. I was never like, I'm going to do this job so I could be well looked at by the bosses. I just did my job. I was just a hardworking person. That was my ethics. But next thing you know, I have connections at City Hall and the Board of Supervisors, and they're calling me direct, and they're asking for my help. And now I'm going to every community meeting in the city, and every captain's reaching out to me, hey, can you come to this community meeting? And they want to know what's going on with homeless outreach. And, so I was suddenly like the go-to person. I was the subject matter expert in homelessness. And
that's a happy byproduct of good hard work.
Yeah, I think so. Going back to the acting lieutenant spot, that's not normal in our department. You might fill in while they're on vacation, or maybe they need somebody's retired, and then the next round of promotions comes and they bring someone down, and they did it. They just left me there, And then once I did well enough on the lieutenant's exam, they're just like, yeah, you're going to get the next promotion coming up. Sad part, had it not been for COVID, we normally promote like 20 at a time. And I was number 12 on the list, and they promoted 10. I was like, okay. So, another year or so down the road, it was just over a year, that one of the hard things is that the permanent promotions came out a month after my arrest, but
oh, man.
For me, like everyone says, hey, you did the job, you got the salary, you got the retirement, so be happy with that.
And not only that, had you continued for a month, where would you be?
Well, I'll just say this right now. I'd be dead.
Oh, yeah.
I would finally have taken my life. I think had I gotten away with that robbery, the shame and guilt would have been so bad. I don't think I could have lived with myself anymore.
And not only that, you are the worst robber in the history of pharmacy robberies.
Yeah.
You really should not have gotten away with that.
No. Like they say, the joke, don't rob a bank with me. Yeah, don't rob a pharmacy with me either.
Yeah, no, I'm not. No, we're good.
Good. Probably not going to happen again, I can say with 100% certainty. But, so there was a lot of phone calls made down to the DA's office. Hey, this is a good guy. Obviously he had something going. And the DA did make some statements to the press that, hey, what he did was wrong, but, we're going to look at the full picture. But I didn't know what was going to happen for the first year, which was difficult because, I'm dealing with the shame. I'm dealing with the guilt. I'm just now starting to get some treatment for the PTSD. And I relapsed on the alcohol twice again because I just couldn't deal with everything. And it was too much. And my attorney's like, hey, I don't know. I'm trying to get you probation, but you may have to go to prison for a year or two. He goes, I'm talking to the DA. I'm talking to the judge. I'm not sure. And every time I would hear that, I would relapse. It's like, why can't I just give me an answer? So it took a year, December of 2022. He goes, okay, your court date's on December 23rd. He goes, I think what's going to happen is you're going to get probation, but you're going to have to serve a year in the county jail. Okay. I kept hoping, I'm going to court on December 23rd. Maybe the judge will have a holiday heart and just knock it down to probation. But no, but in anticipation of that, I had to celebrate Christmas a week early with my daughters and my wife. And, that still bothers me that I had to put them through everything, including, let's celebrate Christmas today because dad's going to be in jail in a week. It was a rough week for me. It really was. But the judge was very fair. She spent, I think, longer than she probably would with others, just explaining for sentencing and why she came up with the sentence that she did. And so the final sentence was, 3 years, felony probation, a year in the county jail. Most counties around here, you get automatic 50% reduction because of overcrowding. So I was going to have to serve 6 months. And there it was, December 23rd. I was taken into custody into court, whisked over to the jail, brought up, put in my jail cell. I was on an administrative segregation pod for obvious reasons. And not even 15 minutes after being in my cell, the deputy comes in. He goes, "Hey, just let you know, all the inmates already know who you are." So I was like, okay, anticipated that. I worked in the jails before. There's never any secrets there.
And you were also plastered all over the newspapers.
I think I missed that part. When my first day up at the farm, I got there Friday, went to sleep, woke up Saturday. My roommate's like, "Hey, let's go have some breakfast." I walk into the room. So we had the same room we did all our meetings was also where we ate. And there's a big screen TV. And I kid you not, right when I walk in, what news story is playing on TV? Mm. There's my face, and there's the reporter talking about it. And I just turn around, go right back to my room. I'm like, fuck that.
Yeah, I'm gonna get this to go.
Yeah. And you know what? 3 or 4 of the people who had no idea who I was, other than what they saw on TV, were at my door, and they're like, "No, come on, let's go. Let's just go walk the track. Let's do something. You're not going to sit in your room."
That's amazing, man. Yeah. I mean, that just touched me.
It goes
that's good.
Yeah. And this is what I tell cops, like, listen, get over this idea the civilians won't understand or won't be empathetic, because these were all the civilians that grabbed me. And they were the ones that are like, "Come on, let's go do this." Because they understood, right? We just talked about that. They understood. My story was their story. And they're going through it. And they're 2-3 weeks into this 30-day program, and they want me to get them. So, yeah, that meant a lot to me. But, I get to the jail. And, of course, the very next day, there's only one free newspaper given out in the jail. It's one of the local newspapers. And there I am on page 2. A story about me getting sentenced. And I was like, okay. And, jail was no fun. I don't recommend it to anybody. I don't know why anybody would ever want to go back. It's no fun being, especially an ad site, because you're locked in your cell all day. You get 30 minutes out. And that's your 30 minutes to call your family, take a shower, try to get some exercise in if you can. And that's it. Then you're back in your cell. And, that was the hardest part for me, was just being in my cell all day and not, like, if you're in a general pop, you get more access to the phone. You can watch TV. They have little tablets. You can watch movies on. I'd get that tablet for 30 minutes, and that was it. So a lot of reading books, a lot of meditating, a lot of games of solitaire. But I did go in there, it was weird because knowing I was going to jail, I built up this horrible, like, this is going to be the worst thing ever possibly happened to me. Inmates are going to be putting crap in my food, and they're going to be harassing me. And, it's just going to be this. I made it out way worse, and it built myself up to like this catastrophic experience. Mm-hmm. But I also told myself I wasn't going to waste this time, that I was, regardless of whatever was going to happen, I was going to try to work on myself. And I wasn't going to put myself as a status like, oh, I used to be a cop. Somehow I'm better than everybody up here. And, I got up there. The first week and a half was rough. I did get put in the safety cell. I found out that if you say you were having suicidal ideations when they talk to you, they're going to strip you down and put you in a safety cell. So a deputy that actually had worked for me in the police department who'd gone over there, he came and he's like, unless you're really going to hurt yourself, don't tell me. He goes, they're going to sign on caution. And so,
Mm-hmm.
it mainly was because I had been on antidepressants and they hadn't got me the prescription yet in the jail. They'd been going on 4 days. And
That'll do it.
That'll do it. Yeah. You're not supposed to suddenly take those. Stop the antidepressants. But anyway, so I also went in there like, I'm going to tell anybody my story who wants to know. And first ones I told were the deputies, and there were 2 of the, the inmate workers, or actually it was only one at that time. And he was just listening and he was like, wow, I can't believe you shared that story. Well, I mean, it was on the news, but
yeah. Here it is, bro.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the other side of it.
Eventually inmates started coming up to my window when it was their turn out. And they're like, hey, what really happened when you got arrested? And now we just tell them the whole story.
Well, now you're a human being. You're not a uniform anymore. You have a story.
Yeah. And I think they respected that. A lot of them were like, I respect the fact that you share that and that you're not saying somehow you're better because you're a cop who did. I go, no, I'm a criminal at this point. I'm here. I'm serving my sentence, deserved sentence. I will never say I didn't deserve that sentence. And so they took a liking to me. And eventually it was just like, hey, can I talk to you about something? And it wasn't I always thought it was going to be about, they're going to want me to talk about their case. And no, they just wanted life questions. I was a little bit, quite a bit older than most of them. There's a lot of youngsters coming in there, but they just generally wanted questions about life. It was kind of funny. And, they have a thing called talking on the wire. So underneath your bunk, you sleep on a concrete bed with a 2-inch mattress, but the vents run underneath there and you could talk to the inmates through the vents. And they call it, can you get on the wire? And they would just holler out to me and say, hey, 19. And then they call me OG or Peckerwood sometimes. I ended up growing this big long beard just because I was like, you know what? Why not? Yeah. And, people would come and, hey, can I get some coffee from you? And like, yeah, I give them my coffee. And I remember one of the trustees was like, hey, you shouldn't give out coffee like that. They're going to start taking advantage of you. It's like, hey, it's like 7 cents worth of coffee for me. It's instant coffee. My wife's put money on my books. If a cup of coffee gets them through their morning, I don't care. Then after a while, they're just like, we respect that you do that. This guy's coming to jail, no money on the books. And first thing they do is go around all the cells in the morning. It's like, hey, can I get a coffee shop? Can you? So I'm like, yeah, and rip up a little piece of paper and put coffee on there and slide it under the door. And I learned some things. I didn't realize that you could pour hot water through a closed door, but you can. If you want to know, you take a potato chip bag and you fold it in half like a funnel and you slide it through the door and the guy on the outside pours hot water in and you have your cup of noodles on the inside. It pours into your cup. Yeah. There's a lot of ingenuity in jail that I think goes wasted, unfortunately.
Yeah, listening to a lot of the jail deputies, they would come in and tell us, all these things. I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Let's get some of these guys business licenses.
Yeah, they should. They have the right direction. But yeah, so it was not as bad as I built it up in my head. It was still no fun. Again, I didn't put myself different than anyone else, and I really did work on myself and focus a lot on my mental health and just what I was going to do when I get out. Did my 6 months. I got out on Father's Day. So I count that as a blessing of the day to get out. Daughters picked me up and just spent the next week just hugging and holding each other and continued on with my therapy. And, I'm sure you can tell I have no problems talking in front of people. I have no problems talking. I've told this before. I had a partner. He was my roommate, but we worked at the same station. And we weren't regular partners, but we were partnered up one night. And he goes, you know what, Davin? You could roll the whole shift by yourself and still not run out of things to say. I was kind of like, yeah, Chris, you're right. You're absolutely right. That's just me. I love to talk. And I love to hear myself talk, I think, too. But so everyone was like, hey, you should really get out there and start telling your story because it's going to have a lot of impact. It's going to mean a lot. And somebody told me this early on, and I do believe it now, is that, this happened to me because I was going to get through it. And I was going to survive, but so that I could tell the story to those who wouldn't survive something like this. And I do. And I think it's having that impact. And this is why I want to go on podcasting. This is why I want to start getting invited out to give talks at organizations, because I know the story means a lot. And not only just in the first responder, there's a lot of people suffering with trauma and addiction. But, obviously my first love is first responders and police officers. And that's who, right now I need to tell my story to. And, I will be writing a book next year. I don't know how long it'll take me, but I definitely want to, get the story in a book for people to read.
Well, you've not that I know anything about writing a book. All right. Let's go ahead and stop right there. Yeah, I wrote a book. It's published. It's been out for 10 days now. It's doing well, and I've gotten fantastic feedback. But you've already have a story. You've put it together. You've got the hero's journey, the underdog story, and then now the win. The only thing stopping you is typing this thing out, man.
Yeah.
You've done the work. Now getting this thing in a book is the easy work. When I started, it was journaling, which I was always dismissive of. But when I started, man, it was just pouring out of me. And then what I ended up with was not what I have now. So, man, I congratulate you on every bit of that. And I wholeheartedly support you writing a book. And the good news for you is, since you like talking to people and you have a pleasing voice, the Audible is going to be a cinch.
Thank you.
So, yeah, man, get all over that. So, just what are you doing now? I know that you're speaking and all that stuff, but and you want to write a book, but what is it now that you're wanting to get kicked off?
I think it's kind of like, we talked about being on the next shift is what's my new me? What am I going to do?
Mm-hmm.
I'm 59, but I'm too young. I don't want to not do anything, right? I mean, my retirement's great, but it's not great. It's not what I was making before. I'm not getting overtime. So now I'm just trying to figure out, what do I want to do with myself? There are some, complications still being on felony probation. I'm trying to get my attorney to help me early termination. Unfortunately, he's tied up in a big murder trial in San Francisco. So he's kind of got more important stuff going on, right?
Kind of rude not to be available when you need
right?
him.
I mean, come on. This trial isn't that big just because it involves tech people and it's on the nightly news every day. And that's all anyone's talking about what about me? I'm a client too.
What about me? I got problems.
Yeah. I got 99.
Well,
never mind.
Well, where can people find you?
I think the easiest right now is LinkedIn. I'm very active on
Mm-hmm.
LinkedIn. My contact information is on there. I've already had several people reach out to me. I've had a couple international podcasters recently reach out, so I'm excited for that.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And that's the thing. You can put my email in the notes. It's contactdavincole@gmail.com.
Yep, I'm going to put all the links in there so people can get a hold of you. I mean, your story is just, man, I love it. Everybody wants to see the win, and you're there, buddy. It's just, man, I'm blown away by the whole thing.
It was a hard.
You got any parting thoughts for us? What's that?
It was a hard fought win.
Yeah, and those are the best wins.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to see somebody walk to victory, for God's sakes. I mean, that's like John Wick.
Yeah.
Like, okay, we give up. What we did with your dog was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
The movie's over. Nobody wants to see that. I mean, it's the hard fought wins are the ones that, those are the ones people remember, man. And the human condition, there's a TED talk that I've referenced several times, and it's something that hits me every time I see it, by Scott Mann. It's called The Generosity of Scars. Yeah, write it down.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you, full disclosure, if you don't start watching this at the edge of your seat, you'll be there very quickly. And it's it comes out swinging.
Sure.
But in that, it talks about our scars being the relatable connective tissue. People can find something in your story to grab a hold of. It's the human condition of what's connected us. And I think the win and the hard fought, people see that in themselves, and it's showing them a way forward. There's a light that people can reach out to. So I think what you're doing is fantastic, man.
Doug.
Doing it myself and being on this mission with guys like you and people like Jess and, Aaron Nugent and Rebecca Lynn. There's so many people. John Kelly, I spoke with him yesterday.
Yeah.
There's so many people that are just, man, using their voice and finding the power in that. So, yeah, buddy. Man, I really appreciate you coming on today. Parting thoughts, anything for us?
It's kind of what I've taken, one philosophical view of life. And I think we talked about this. It's the Stoic philosophy of amor fati, just living your fate, accepting your fate. I mean, life happens to you. And there's so much we don't control. So just take what you get, good or bad, and roll with it. And the other thing I tell people now is, it's okay to be broken. It's just not okay to stay that way.
Yep.
And I think that's huge for first responders. Like, it's okay to say, hey, I'm a little bit broken right now. Don't stay there. Don't let yourself get stuck in it, because you can't. You will recover. You'll get through whatever's going on. It may be harder for you, maybe easier for you, but you'll get through it. And surround yourself with a team, because you're never going to do this by yourself. I wouldn't be here right now on my own. It took a team.
No,
it took
that's it, man. I thought for years that I could do it by myself and just, you're not strong enough. We've never done anything on our own.
No.
The hardest calls, we always call for backup.
Yeah.
But anyway, man, I really appreciate your time. And in closing, thank you for joining us for this episode. I hope Davin's experiences and insights resonate with you. If you'd like to connect with Davin or learn more about his work, you can find him on LinkedIn through the links in the show notes. If you enjoy this podcast, please like, subscribe, leave a rating and comment to help us spread the word. You can find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, or Facebook. Easily just visit my website at dougwhiteofficial.com. We'd love to hear you, whether it's constructive feedback, suggested guests, or topics you'd like us to cover. Thank you for tuning in to tell this story, and we'll see you next time. Davin, thanks for being here, buddy. And if I can ever be of service, reach out to me.
Thanks for inviting me, Doug. Thank you.
Take care, brother.